Well, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the meeting of the Grandville City Council. I'd like to call the meeting to order and ask Marcy to call the roll, please.
Councilmember Flanagan.
Here.
Vanderlos. Merringa. Steenstra.
Here.
Sullivan.
Here.
Vanderwall. And Mayor Mas.
Here. Well, as you can see, we've got 3 people missing this evening. All of them have been asked to be excused. So is there a motion to excuse Randy Gelderlos, Josh Merringa, and J.R. Vanderwall?
Motion. Support.
Motion and support. All those in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
And the opposition, please say no. Okay, good. Well, for the invocation tonight, Councilmember Tim Steenstra will be giving that. So for those of you who wish, I'd invite you to stand, and we're going to follow that with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Let's pray. Almighty God, we give you thanks for this beautiful day, for this beautiful time of the year when things warm up, things grow, and we see beauty in our city. We thank you for our city and the place that it is for all the residents and the employees and the service people, and we just are so grateful for Grandville, for its leadership, for its employees, for its residents. And we thank you for this time and place here at City Hall to have our scheduled meeting, and we thank you that we can hold this tonight, and we ask a blessing on the information that's shared and the decisions that are made, and may this be a great night. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Tim. Appreciate that. Council, you have before you the agenda for tonight's meeting. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved. Support.
Motion support. Any discussion? All those in favor of approving the agenda, please say yes.
Yes.
Any opposition, please say no. This strikes me with such a small group, you'll be doing a lot of work. A lot of motion and support. We also have a copy of our proposed minutes from our last meeting, April 27. You've had a chance to look at those. So is there a motion to approve those minutes?
Motion. Support.
And support. Any additions, corrections, anything anybody wants to point out or highlight? If not, all those in favor of approving the minutes from April 27, please say yes. Yes.
Yes.
The opposition, please say no. Then we have the bills tonight, smaller amount than we've become accustomed to, so it's still substantial, about $500,000. Tell us about them, Griffin.
Yes, thank you. So we have checks presented for approval this evening in the amount of $536,727.44, which is a little bit normal than our average meeting. A couple invoices to highlight this evening. Cummins Sales and Service, invoice $6,411. This is for some planned maintenance at the clean water plant, specifically related to a couple of the generators that they have out there. Aetna Supply, who is doing the work for us associated with the water meter replacement project, and invoicing the amount of $96,050. Pitney Bowes Bank Inc. purchase PWR. Oh, never mind, we're skipping that one. My apologies. Progressive A&E, that's the P one I meant to say. Progressive A&E in the amount of $3,220. This was for the traffic signal study for the intersection of Canal and 36 that you all have included in your packet. Stryker Sales LLC in the amount of $14,109. This is for miscellaneous medical equipment as well as the AEDs for the fire department, the replacement AEDs from the fire department that were approved back in July of 25. We used opioid funds to fund those. If you all remember, we bought similar AEDs the year before for the police department. We have our 2026 contribution to the right place in the amount of $6,000. This was the last one of the previous pledge. At the last meeting, you all will likely recall you approved a new multi-year pledge with the right place, which will be for the subsequent financial years. We have Varnum in the amount of $65,441. I wanted to highlight this because it's a little bit more than our annual legal cost. That's because this is made up of a number of different legal expenses, about $23,000 from assessing, about $13,000 general matters, about $5,000 in labor associated with the ongoing labor negotiations we have, a little over $11,000 for the clean water plant, about $11,000 for the DEA. So what I would just highlight there is a lot of different projects going on throughout the city, and the more projects we have going on, the more legal costs associated with making sure we're doing those things the right way. So that's what I have to highlight this evening, but if there are any questions or concerns, please let me know.
Great, thank you, Griffin. Any questions for Griffin on any of the bills tonight? If not, is there a motion to approve the bills tonight in the amount of $536,727.44?
So moved. Support.
Motion and support. Any final comments? Marcy, would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Steenstra,
Yes.
Sullivan,
Yes.
Flanagan,
Yes.
and Mayor Mas.
Yes. My favorite time of the meeting, public comment. We're also gonna have a public hearing on the budget, so if you have a comment on the budget, you can speak at either time. But let's open it up for public comment. Anybody like to address the council, just come on out to the podium, give us your name and address, and tell us what you're thinking about tonight. Mike, welcome.
How you doing?
Good.
Mike Cobb, 3362 40th. Just wanted to thank Jane and everybody for the budget. I mean, it's just a lot of work and, yeah, it's good stuff, so thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else like to address the council? Last chance, last call, nobody? Okay. All right, then we will go to the public hearing, and we'll open that up. And I think, Jane, you have a presentation that will start off.
Yep, when Jane's coming up, I've got a little bit of an intro just to give her a minute to come up. So just wanted to share that I'm really pleased to present the proposed fiscal year 26-27 financial plan to the city council. This budget is the results of months of work by our team, particularly Finance Director Jane Sauerman. I want to express my sincere appreciation to her and to all of our department heads and everyone else who contributed throughout this process. I feel like we have many exciting things happening in the city of Grandville, and this budget was developed not only to meet the community's current needs, but also to position the city for long-term success. Our team remains committed to providing the best value for taxpayer dollars, serving as responsible stewards for public resources, and ensuring Grandville continues to be a great place to live, work, and play. Some general fund overview highlights that I know Jane will talk about in some more detail, but I think are worth noting is that I'm pleased to share that there is no millage rate increase included with the proposed budget, so the proposed millage rate would remain at 12.55 mils. There's a lot of notable one-time investments in important capital infrastructure, including streets, the water system, and public facilities, and it also maintains a healthy fund balance of approximately 20%. I do want to note that the projected fund balance in the budget that Jane's going to be presenting is about 1 percentage point higher than originally estimated during budget workshop number 1. This is due to some additional financial data we've received over the past 2 months since that initial conversation in March. The budget includes investment in a lot of city council priorities following up on our priority setting workshop earlier in the year, including community events, planning for the property south of the cemetery, investing in a mobile speed sign, communications and marketing, continued investment in the road and bridge plan, senior center improvements, updating the website, city hall refresh phase 2, physical security upgrades phase 2, and continued engagement with the right place. We also spent considerable amount of time discussing the city's long-term financial outlook in light of the uncertain economic climate, changes to state revenue sharing, and other external factors. As we move forward, we're going to continue to carefully evaluate options so we can all work together to plan strategically so informed decisions can be made as necessary. That said, I can say with great confidence that the city of Grandville has a strong financial foundation both now and for the future. Our organization remains committed to responsible stewardship, high-quality service delivery, long-term sustainability, and the continued progress on city council priorities and in capital investment. In terms of next steps, this evening we're gonna be hosting the public hearing. Jane's gonna present an overview of the proposed financial plan. Next week on May 18th, after we've incorporated any final changes that we hear from the council or based on any feedback we received tonight, the budget, water and sewer rates, and the financial year fee schedule will all be brought to the council for consideration. And then finally, on June 22nd, so the last meeting in this fiscal year, we will bring the proposed budget amendments to wrap up the fiscal year 25-26 budget as we move into the audit process after that. So just want to thank you all again for your patience and support throughout this process. It is a very taxing one, no pun intended, and is a lot of work for everyone on our team, including all of you on the council, and just appreciate all the extra time, energy, and effort that gets put into that. And I look forward to another productive, impactful, and successful year for the city of Grandville.
And with that, many of you have seen something similar before. A couple of new people, so this is probably going to be fresh for you. I'm going to go through it really quickly because it is just an overview. I was talking to Griffin, I said, I feel like I should turn the podium around and speak to the people out here because they're the ones that are here to listen to the public hearing. But I guess we typically don't take questions mid, but we can. So if there's anything that jumps out at you that you want clarification on, please speak up. So, first slide kind of is an overview of the general fund revenues. Again, Griffin said that the millage rate is going to be 12.55, no change from 25-26. This will generate $12.15 million for the general fund. Of that, street funding is $1.46 million, and then our annual debt service requirement is about $265,000. Our property taxable value increased by the state was 2.7% this year, with an increase of 4.7% overall. And state shared revenue is about 1.76 million, which is a decrease of about $90,000. Just a little update on that. I think you all have been aware that the state has kind of revise the way they're doing state shared revenue to do carve-outs for public safety and roads. We did just today get some additional revenue sharing. Still no formula, so next year's revenue sharing is a bit of a black hole, but I did add some additional revenue post this for next year because we got a little bit of a hint as to additional money. Court and probation expense split with Walker is still no change at 60%. Millage comparison with our area cities, you can see we're still one of the lowest. The one thing I want you to note between us and our neighbor Kentwood is that while Kentwood might be just slightly under what we charge for millage, the majority of their funding comes from additional voted millages or special assessments. As I believe their original charter millage was 5 mills, where yours was 17. So in order to keep pace, they've had to do a lot of additional voted millages. That being said, still one of the lowest in the area, and we are the only one in this grouping that has not hit their capacity and has to start charging more, asking for more money in a different way. This is an average residential taxable value of $110,000. We'll pay roughly $4,500 a year. This is the breakout of where it kind of all goes. The average residential taxpayer will pay roughly $1,380 in annual taxes, which comes out to about $115 a month. And again, the millage goes to police, fire, parks, recreation, library, sidewalks, streets, elections, planning, code enforcement, community events, and anything else that is associated with the general fund. Total tax dollar allocation kind of breaks out like this. You can see the schools is still the majority of what is levied. City of Grandville comes in second at 31%, and then Kent County is third at 15%, and then GRCC, the Rapid, and the library kind of bring up the rear. General fund revenue by source, you can see property taxes, and then we've talked about this before in other meetings that we've had. Property taxes is about the only thing we really have control over, that we can decide how much revenue we want to generate by what we levy in property taxes. State sources, we're at their mercy. And then as far as intergovernmental licenses and permits, charges for services, fines and forfeitures, and other revenue sources, it is based on use and the market with interest. So again, taxes, it's the only one we really have control over as a governmental unit. You can see the general fund expenditure comparative by category here. Again, we are forward-facing service organization, so the majority of your spending is always going to be in personnel services. We are very employee-focused. That's where the majority of our dollars goes. Other services and charges comes in second, and then supplies and debt service is a very small portion of our budget, along with any capital outlay. Griffin kind of touched on some of the highlights. Personnel, the administrative staff is being given a 3%, or we're projecting a 3% COLA increase, which breaks out into a roughly $165,000 increase in wages and $65,000 increase in fringe benefits. We have contractual wage increases. We had 2 of our associations bargain this year, and the contractual wage increases range from 4 to 4.5% for this first year. Increase in health insurance, the state cap is showing a 2.9% increase. The MERS, $786,000 is the general fund portion of our required contribution to our closed defined benefit plan. The rest of that $1.2 million is paid for by the water and sewer funds. Other post-employee benefit costs, which is the health insurance and the HCSP dollars that we set aside for retiring employees. I think you remember last year we were right around 92% funded. I'm really excited to see where we're going to end up this year. But our required funding this year for employees hired after 6/30/2018 will be roughly $80,000. And then the retiree health savings plan, that HCSP for new hires after 6/19 will be roughly $36,000. Depending on the market, we could get a little help with that as well. So our operating expenditures, all we did was hit the highlights here. Things that are different from last year, information technology, penetration tests and cloud migration, elections has the consolidation of precincts, building and grounds, Griffin touched on that, physical security upgrades, the city hall refresh, and the senior center improvements, and then some other general government, which is communication support and updated website, which I think everyone's really excited about. General fund, the police and fire. Police has the temporary 1-year increase to 29 officers due to the retirements that are coming up. And then they have a plan to spend the majority of their forfeiture equipment next year, which is right around $100,000. And under the fire, we've got a new fire captain that is in this budget, and then the emergency warning siren upgrades, and then our new cost function of community events. You remember that we're closing the 4th of July fund. We're adding a special events coordinator that we share with the DDA to help with the cost of 4th of July. And then our capital expenditures for general fund, again, building and grounds has the physical security, and then general O&M of $160,000. Court's looking to add some bulletproof vests. The police department have the cameras. That number is wrong. That's supposed to be, say, $70,000. The flop cameras, and then the forfeiture equipment spend Parks has the upgrade to Lee Street Park of the park equipment, and then some general O&M for the parks. Fire department has the early warning system, and then some replacement of legacy equipment. The projected fund balance, this page kind of stays in flux until you guys come and adopt next week, which these numbers will be very close, but again, like the budgeted operating revenue, I added another $50,000 today. And then I will take a look at the property tax roll. That's one of the last things I do because everything is changing until Charlie gives us the info, and I'll have a better idea of where we're gonna be. There's still some things, we just had a decrease in tax revenue of I think about $20,000 due to an MTT decision for, which was that?
I'm not sure off the top of my head.
Yeah, I can't think of it right now. So it'll be very close to this, but again, Griffin touched on the projected fund balance of almost 21%. And then major and local streets, we've got 1.165 million coming into major streets for the capital projects listed there. Century Center, 40th Street Canal, 44th Street, and then the Behan Foley Drain project. The local streets, piggybacking off of our workshop number 2, we were asked to provide some options for potential funding of local streets, and then the options that we came up with were number 1, we stay with no local street improvements in 26-27. Number 2, the Major Streets Fund had some fund balance that we were holding on to because next year is the big bridge year and the 44th Street projects, which we're getting grant funding for. We were trying to keep a cushion there to help offset any over costs or unplanned funding. And so our second one was to use major streets, use that fund balance that we were kind of holding on to support the local street paving. And then number 3 was to use just straight up motor pool funding and use their net position to help fund some paving of local streets. So those are the 3 options that we came up with when we were asked for some funding options.
And we'll ask council for some additional feedback on those later in the meeting.
So you can see here where when we came to you with workshop number 1, we had no local street funding planned. We had no interfund transfer from the general fund going in there to try to offset that. But since you asked us to take a look at that, we have put together a plan where we would transfer $300,000 of that 1.46 million into local streets to help fund that. And then the total capital projects that we have are listed there, and we are looking to add about $470,000 in capital spending in the local streets fund. The motor pool, pretty self-explanatory. The capital purchases with the pickups, the marked patrol vehicle, the unmarked police vehicle, the sweeper, and the mower. Roughly $811,000, and then some new items. So those would all be replacement items, and then the new items that Charlie's looking to add to his inventory are a salt spreader and the speed radar board, which has been requested. The sewer fund, we have an increase to commodity and ready to serve charges based on our funding model. And we are looking to, it's about a 9% increase, so we would be looking to take the commodity charge, which is per 1,000 gallons of $3.52 to $3.84, and then ready to serve charges would go from $18.62 to $20.30. It's an additional cost of roughly $6.50 per quarter for an average bill with 15,000 gallons of usage. Clean Water Capital Projects funds are the maintenance center, the new SCADA system, and then other O&M purchases for legacy equipment and maintenance items. The collection system capital projects, we're looking to do some work on the Canal Force Main, the Wallace Lift Station pumps, and then some other O&M purchases which include lining of some sewer mains. Water fund, again, we have an increase to the commodity and ready to serve charges. That 6% is what was recommended by the water rate study that we did last year. That would take our commodity charge per 1,000 gallons from $4.35 to $4.61, and our ready to serve charge from $32 a quarter to $33.92 per quarter, which is an additional cost of roughly $5.80 per quarter for an average bill of 15,000 gallons. Capital projects, which are bond funded, and while they're under water fund, the bond revenue sits in a capital improvements fund, which is where we are paying for all of the water infrastructure improvements out of, which include the meter replacements, which will carry over into next year, even though it has already been started. And then the 2 water main projects of Canal Avenue and 40th Street to Canal and Wilson, which I think is on our agenda tonight. Yeah. And then again, comparable utility rates. The most important thing I want you to understand about this chart is that all of the rates, except for those highlighted in yellow, are 25-26 rates. Nobody has really published their increases yet this year. So I'm comparing our increases to everybody's last year's rates, and we're still very close to the bottom. So even with the little 9% and 6% increase, we still have some of the lowest water rates in the area. That's it. Anybody have questions, comments?
I've got a question for you.
Sure.
So, and it's about the funding for additional local streets, because I feel pretty strongly we should
Yeah.
do some of those.
Mm-hmm.
So the option one is do nothing, and I don't like that option at all. The other one is takes the money out of the major streets or the motor pool. Do you have any opinion?
I do.
Okay, I'd like to hear what your opinion is on which one. Yeah.
So my opinion on street funding is we should spend what we get. And our original budget proposal to you had us keeping a fairly hefty cushion, almost 18% in major streets and 12%, I believe, in local streets. And in discussion about what's the likelihood we're going to need that, we kind of went to, it's there, we can spend it and we can budget for it, and then if it ends up being we need some help because we can't fund it all, then you look to motor pool as your safety net to try to backfill. So instead of taking it all out of motor pool, we look at motor pool as kind of it's there if we absolutely have to do it. So my preference would be to do number 2. That's my opinion.
Good.
Based on what I've seen. And we still have positive fund balances in both of those funds. So they're not as strong as they were before we threw in $400,000, but they're still acceptable in my opinion.
Thanks.
Yep.
Jason?
Just to add to that, I know in some of the notes it mentioned transferring out of major and into local. Would you effectively just be taking the 1.4?
Yes.
The 1.46,
Right.
when we're
So
splitting it differently.
It would essentially be of the almost $1.5 million coming in this year, instead of transferring it all to major, we would transfer it all to major minus the $300,000 that would go to local, and then we would make up the difference in the major street funds with the existing fund balance, and then use that 300 plus the remaining fund balance in locals to use locals.
Yep.
And then essentially, our proposal for that one is use motor pool as the catch-all. I think the concern is, and I guess I'll share this, my concern with going to motor pool to fund road projects is, if you do it once, admittingly, it's not a huge deal. But the problem is, once you do it once, what's gonna stop us from keep going back to that fund every time we wanna do some extra road projects or every time it gets tight? And I think staff's position is that's not sustainable. So we tried to propose an option based on the feedback that we heard that brings some local projects back onto the plate for this year, maintains our financial position to be able to continue to do the critical bridge projects planned for the future year without starting the process of essentially going to the motor pool fund for a different purpose. So I think our position is to accomplish his council's goal while maintaining the sustainability of the motor pool, while we're also recognizing that we do have that fallback should we need it.
And you have some fund balance in general.
Some, correct, yes.
Got another question.
Sure.
So, even if we end up paying cash for the new sweeper out of the motor pool, there
Mhm.
still would be enough fund balance?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
And
I wouldn't have suggested it otherwise.
And we did note, because there was, I think, a variety of opinions among the council on the best way to finance the street sweeper you mentioned. So just wanna clarify of how we moved forward with that, recognizing there wasn't necessarily, we didn't take a vote, there wasn't consensus, necessarily on exactly how to do that. We're maintaining that in the budget for this upcoming year, but there will be the understanding we can discuss financing options further prior to making that purpose. And council can make the value-based decision on, what they feel like is the best way to ultimately make that purchase, whether it's cash, financing, renting, whatever that may be.
Any other questions, Tim? Mike? Okay, great.
Great.
Did a great job of explaining things.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, Gene.
Thank you. So public hearing is still open. Anybody here tonight like to comment on the proposed budget? So just come on up to the podium, give us your name and address, tell us your thoughts. Okay, seeing no interest, we'll close the public hearing. And so that will be up for consideration at our next meeting, which is next week,
Yes, the 18th.
because we moved it up a week because of the holiday, which
Yes.
is really early this year. so-
Yes, it is.
Okay, great. You also have before you tonight the consent agenda, and approval would be in the best interest of the city. It's a number of reports, police report, which was really interesting, as always, and always appreciate the graphics. And we have the treasurer's report, and both of those are from April. We have the minutes from the Environmental Sustainability Committee's April meeting. And also, we're asking for the authorization of the school resource officer agreement. That's a 2-year agreement, I believe.
Yeah, and it's the same percentages historically, so in year one, the schools will be funding 60% of those officer positions during the school year. The only thing I wanna note on that one is, my understanding is historically, we've been doing 3-year contracts, just based on a little bit of uncertainty in everyone's budgets. We mutually agreed with the schools to just do a 2-year agreement right now. So that is something that, obviously we'll revisit at that point. We should have a new police union contract in place at that point, as well as maybe getting a little bit more clarity, both on some of our funding sources, as well as I know the schools are dealing with some similar challenges. But we've had a great relationship with the schools. I know I'm still relatively new, but just they're a pleasure to work with, and it was nice to get to interact with the new superintendent, getting, or the to-be superintendent, to get this finalized.
I did have a question about it. Well, you know what, let me keep going through the rest of it. Then there's also several proclamations. One is for Police Week, which is May 10 through 16. Emergency Medical Services Week, May 17 through 23. And Public Works Week, May 17 through 23. So that is the consent agenda, and like I said, approval would be in the best interest of the city. I did have a question about this school liaison
Yes.
position. So the memorandum of understanding just references the Grandville Public Schools, but you're involved with the parochial school as well?
Yeah,
How does that work?
they don't contribute this system, and that's part of the reason why we do it 60% of the year that Grandville Public Schools kind of funds, and then we have that 40% that we're on the hook for, but that allows us to be able to help that school and that school system, and also still utilize those officers for if we get a major road incident that occurs, we can still pull our SROs without
Okay,
kind of feeling obligated to be at the schools 100% of the time.
thanks. Jason?
I just wanted to, one of the things that stood out to me in the police report was the incident on April 20th and, like a traffic stop and identifying, somebody and then like making the decision to not pursue somebody and circling back later and just, you know, calmer heads and still led to a great outcome and just the decision making on what's safest for the community. I just thought, nice job.
Any other questions or comments about the consent agenda? Wise, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda in the best interest of the city?
Moved.
Support. Motion and support. Marcy, would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Sullivan,
Yes.
Flanagan,
Yes.
Steenstra,
Yes.
and Mayor Mas.
Yes. Reverend City Managers Report.
Thank you. Yeah, we've got a number of items on the city manager's report this evening. I'm gonna start with the canal and 40th water main projects that I know we've been talking about for some time. So there's some memos in the packet. One specifically details the 5 bids that were received for the water main replacement projects planned for Canal Avenue and 40th Street, as well as the proposed next steps. To move forward, it's recommended that the City Council take the following actions. We're seeking authorization of a total construction budget not to exceed $6.25 million, as well as awarding the project to the low bidder of Kaminga and Rude Boots, Inc. in the amount of just over $5.1 million. Just as a friendly reminder, these projects are going to be funded from a variety of sources, primarily from bond funds, but as well as some street funds and sewer funds. And the construction at this point in time is planned for spring of 2027. As many of you will likely remember, this was a project we were originally planning to kick off this construction season. We had initially bid these projects and then canceled the bid based on the recommendation of the city engineer. We were not getting good responses and didn't feel like that was going to be in the best interest of the city or its taxpayers. So ultimately we withdrew that bid, re-let the project, and ultimately feel like we got a really competitive price from a reputable contractor, so we're happy to bring that forward to you all this evening. The real exchange for that is just going to be being a little bit more flexible on timeline and allowing them to start as late as next spring. I think we're hopeful they may be able to start some work this fall, but for all intents and purposes, we're going to tentatively plan on those in the spring. And City Engineer Tim Hofer is here from Warren Brugink if there are questions or concerns more specifically about this project. But this evening we're looking for authorization for a total construction budget as well as awarding the contractor to the low bidder.
Tim, it looks like, it's a lot of money for the project, but it was under the engineer's estimate, so
Yeah.
I guess that's good.
Yeah, no, we were very, very happy with where the bids came in. You know, there were 2 that were lower, significantly lower, like 400,000, 480,000 lower. And there were 3 above, so, you know, I think our estimate was right in the middle, and the 2 contractors, I think, both were kind of hungry, wanted to work in the city of Grandville. Of course, K&R has worked a few years ago on the Ivan Rest project, and I think the city liked working with them, and they really liked working with the city too, and I think that's reflected in their price. But
Yeah, I noticed Kaminga and Rudaboots and Wyoming Excavators, they were really close to each other too.
about $27,000 apart, which is, they like I said, they were hungry, and I think they were bidding on the same project. They understood the plans and understood, you know, the expectations here in the city. So good asphalt prices, none of the uncertainty that's out there. It affected that. They're right in line with, you know, kind of a normal estimate of what we're see this year, so, very happy to see that.
And again, these projects are gonna be a big deal, cause obviously it's much more than just repaving them. They're gonna completely reconstruct those roads after replacing the infrastructure in them. And 40th and Canal being obviously major thoroughfares through our community, it's gonna be really important that that the infrastructure in those roads is in a good place for many years to come. Just also wanted to remind the council that we are still planning to host a community kind of pre-construction meeting, open house with the contractor. So we'll just have a little bit more time to get that organized with the project not anticipated to start until the spring. But
Anybody have any questions for Griffin or Tim about contractors?
I'm just happy to see that they got the bid. They've done good work for us, and we haven't seen them for a bit. It's been a couple of years, right?
They did Wyoming 2 years ago maybe, or I mean Ironrest, from
Yeah,
Prairie to 28th Street, and very good to work with.
Yeah, a good company.
Yes.
Real happy to see that.
And I also don't wanna undersell the fact that, you know, getting five bids on a project of this scale, or
Yeah.
we saw it a couple meetings ago, you know, with our overlay projects, you know, I've been talking with Charlie and Tim a little bit. It's been really nice that, you know, I've been kind of blessed the 2 years I've been here that we've seen pretty competitive bidding for some of these large projects. For those of you who are new or those of you who have been on here, you'll remember about the 5 years before that. I know these guys were fighting to get 2, if not 3 bids for some projects. So I think we really are seeing the fact that, you know, when we can get truly competitive bids and have enough contractors out there willing to bid on the work, I really do think it makes a difference for the community.
Any other comment? Jason?
Am I right in seeing that this is under what's budgeted in the capital plan?
I'm sorry, say that again?
This budget amount here is lower than what's budgeted in the
Yes.
capital plan? 750,000, it looks like.
For the Canal and 40th Street project?
Yeah.
Yeah, is it more than that? Oh, I'm thinking total project because the road funds have to pick up part of it. Yes, that's correct.
So it looks like it would be a two-step process here. One, award the bid to the low bidder, Camigan Root Boots, in the amount of $5,104,442.60. Is there a motion to that effect?
Motion.
Support.
Any comments, questions? Marcy, would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Flanagan,
Yes.
Steenstra,
Yes.
Sullivan,
Yes.
and Mayor Mas.
Yes. The next step would be to approve the total estimated budget of $6,250,000 as outlined in Tim's May 1 letter. Is there a motion to approve that estimated budget?
So moved.
Support.
Motion and support. Any comments, questions? Marcy, would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Steenstra,
Yes.
Sullivan,
Yes.
Flanagan,
Yes.
and Mayor Mas.
Yes.
Thank you. So building off of that discussion, we obtained a proposal from Progressive Companies, who's the firm we traditionally work with, to conduct traffic signal studies, speed studies, traffic analysis, so on and so forth. It's included in the packet a proposal to evaluate some various low-cost traffic calming measures that could theoretically be incorporated into the planned utility project on Canal Avenue. I think we all know we've received some concerns about safety and vehicle speeds on Canal, as well as the council had a discussion about this during their January 26th strategic planning session. So wanted to bring this all to you should the council like to explore it more. I feel like this would be the appropriate time to do so. It would give Progressive a little bit of time, particularly with the canal project not scheduled to start to the spring, to conduct their analysis, and we can evaluate whether or not anything's recommended or anything's able to be incorporated into the final project. I do want to note that we did include a little bit of their time in the proposal so that they could present the findings and recommendations to the council at a future meeting. So at this point in time, it's recommended that the council consider authorizing the city manager to sign the transportation engineering services proposal included in the packet in the amount of $3,800. I will just say my hope is that, you know, this kind of meets the goals and is a next step we can take in terms of being responsive to some of the concerns we've heard on Canal. I mean, I think at the same time, I know I've personally spoke with the engineer, and I think they understand that, you know, we have a project that is planned and upcoming, that's a utility infrastructure project, but we are looking for some help or some professional recommendations, whether there's any low-cost options that could be incorporated that to promote some level of traffic calming. So I'll leave it there, but I'm happy to answer any questions the best I can.
Questions for Griffin? I guess I'm not surprised that the traffic studies show that a light was not warranted, met the warrants. I mean, I guess, but it's good to,
At the
I
signal,
think,
yeah.
to have gone through the process. I mean, and the traffic studies are always so complicated.
Well,
and
they're very
intensive.
data-driven, and
Yeah.
yeah, I don't think we were surprised at the 36th and Canal. Again, that's kind of consistent with our understanding that, you know, based on the very specific warrants from the traffic vehicle code, that wasn't gonna meet it. But I also know this proposal would expand that scope a little bit and kind of look at Canal overall. I think they talked about, you know, kind of variety of different things from striping to raised intersections to, you know, some various low-cost options that are probably worth exploring. I know, you know, I think we're in a little bit of a difficult position because on one hand, you know, I think we're very aware that there are high speeds and concerns associated with that road. I also know I've had some conversations with Tim and Warren Brugink about we want to be very thoughtful about any traffic calming or anything we may do, not purely because of cost, but I think there's a lot of times communities will incorporate traffic calming improvements that they think are going to help, and what you find in impact is they may actually have the counter effect. So that's why I think we ultimately got to the point of let's have a true traffic engineer take a look at it and give us some recommendations, and at that point I think council can decide, is there anything that we would like to incorporate at this time while we're planning to do this project in the next year, or is it something we need to continue to look into potentially for the future?
Council, any thoughts on Griffin's request to enter into a contract for $3,800?
Yeah, I think it makes sense to move forward with that proposal. I think we've heard enough complaints along Canal that it's natural for us to take that as the next step. That's a small investment for the city to make, to look more long-term, like Griffin was saying, at maybe some other traffic calming measures we can take in lieu of a traffic signal, so I'm supportive of that.
Sounds like a motion to me.
Motion.
All right. Support. And support. Any other comments, questions? Tim, anything?
I'm for it too.
Okay. Marcy, would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Sullivan,
Yes.
Flanagan,
Yes.
Steenstra,
Yes.
and Mayor Mas.
Yes.
The next item I have for you this evening is the next steps regarding the sunset of WCET. So on February 9, the proposed transition plan for WCET was presented to the council. I did include, with Marcy's help, a copy in the packet if you all would like to reference that. So the next step in the process is formalizing that transition by approving the proposed termination agreement. The termination agreement has already been approved by our partners at the City of Hudsonville, Hudsonville Public Schools, and Grandville Public Schools. The board is continuing to work through distribution of assets. I do want to specifically note that the proposed agreement outlines a little bit of a different approach for distributing equipment than originally contemplated by the original WCET operations contract from 1988. But the board believes it's in everyone's best interest to streamline that process. A lot of the equipment is outdated and of limited value. There's really unlikely to be any meaningful funds remaining after the wind down and all of the various expenses are paid. So instead of going through kind of this drawn out appraisal and what was the other term in there? It's a much more drawn out process than I think is really in anyone's best interest, particularly with all of us working collaboratively to take these next steps. So, at this time, it's recommended that the council authorize the city manager to sign the proposed termination agreement on behalf of the city of Grandville. As a friendly note, there is funding included in the proposed budget to maintain a similar level of service for recording the city council meetings moving forward. The only remaining item, should the council move forward with this evening, is to address amending the franchise agreements with DirecTV and AT&T to discontinue the collection and distribution of PEG fees after July 1. I am cautiously optimistic these amendments can be brought to you all at one of the subsequent meetings. We have one from DirecTV and we're working through a few things with Comcast, but that would be the final step in the process should the council authorize moving forward with this agreement this evening.
Questions for Griffin? It just strikes me, it's a good example of, at the time we entered into this collaboration and did it, this is how people consume news and so on, and the world has changed, and 30 years, 40 years later, it's very much different, and we'll get it done a different way.
I think sometimes it's kind of funny to think about, because I think you all have been part of so many of these collaborations, over the years. I think it's so interesting when we create them, how rarely we think about, at some point in time, what is it going to take to sunset and move on to the next thing. And I think that's been a little bit of the process with this. I mean, Tim, you can remind me, but I think we've been talking with the WCET board about this for almost the whole time I've been here. And it's
a little bit longer.
And longer. So it's one of those that this has been an ongoing process. I'm very happy that it's been so collaborative among the parties, and I think everyone recognizes it's in everyone's both individual and collective best interest to take these next steps. But it's been an interesting process, because I know I can help you create these agreements. It's a little harder when you're creating the agreements to end something, because we're just not used to doing it quite as much. But I think we feel like we're doing it the right way.
Yeah, and I'd like to say that since Griffin came on, this has accelerated what it needed to do. And we sat around, we talked, we knew we were headed in this direction, but Griffin took the lead and has done wonderful work in getting us to this point. So many thanks, Griffin.
Griffin, I'd just be curious, when we do move to amend those franchise agreements later in the year, if the cable providers are able to provide any sort of cost savings estimate to Grandville residents, if we're able to have that at some point. It's just kind of a tangible piece I'd be interested in and wanting to share with others.
I am happy to look into that. I can tell you it'll be a 1% savings, but 1% of exactly what, I'm not sure.
Yeah. Just curious, whatever information you might be able to provide, but thank you for this. Sure. Great work.
And I will share as well, because I think it's important to note as we talk about evolution and next steps. So the remaining funding that we receive through the franchise agreements that has been going towards supporting WCET, we have reallocated that in the proposed budget, and that is what we are planning on recommending that the council use to hire some additional communication support for the upcoming year. So that'll be a conversation for another meeting, but that is how we are evolving the communications that we were able to provide to the community through WCET and the next and more modern kind of evolution of that process.
Is that PEG fees through the end of this fiscal year?
So PEG fees will go away after
Right.
this fiscal year, because they can only
Right.
be specifically used for these channels.
Yep.
But we have about $70,000 in other franchise revenue that we had been using to support WCET that is going to become available for what I will ultimately be recommending additional communication support.
Those were funds from the general fund that were,
Yes.
okay,
Yes.
okay, yep, I'm good, thanks.
So is there a motion to authorize the city manager to sign that proposed termination agreement?
Motion?
Support.
Motion and support. Marcy, would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Flanagan,
Yes.
Steenstra,
Yes.
Sullivan,
Yes.
and Mayor Mas.
Yes.
So Jane introduced it during her presentation, and I know I made a little bit of a comment that we'd be looking for some discussion or some direction later in the meeting. So during budget workshop number 2, the council requested that staff review and propose some options for reincorporating some local street projects back into the 26-27 budget. So we have brought forward 3 options for your consideration this evening. Option 1, admittingly, is probably not the popular one, which is the status quo, which would be to maintain the budget as presented during budget work session number 1, with no local streets improvements planned for 26-27. This is admittingly probably the most conservative approach in the sense of maintaining a higher level of fund balance for these critical road projects in the upcoming year. Option 2 is where we took a deeper look at that. We found probably what the true minimum we would need to support those projects for the next year, barring any unforeseen circumstances. And option 2 is to use major streets funds fund balance to offset the local streets fund and use the motor pool fund as a backup should bids come in higher than anticipated or we have any other unforeseen circumstances to be able to bring that about $470,000 of projects back into this upcoming year's budget. Option 3 is to use the motor pool fund. That would be to maintain those existing fund balances in the local and major streets fund and use the motor pool fund this year to support those local streets fund project. I am going to note that that option is not recommended at staff at this time by staff at this time, but nevertheless it was discussed as an option and ultimately the decision is up to you all as the council. Options both 2 and 3 would restore that $470,000 into the local streets. That includes work on 40th from Wilson to Mohawk, 40th from Eagle Rock to Ivan Rest, Kentwood from Viaduct to Nardine, and Nardine from Sanford to Kentwood, as well as Santa Fe Court. And these projects were specifically picked based and prioritized based on their current condition as well as need, while preserving necessary planned funding for the critical bridge projects in 27-28. Would be interested in getting all of your thoughts this evening. We don't need to take a vote, you all are welcome to, but ultimately at this point in time, staff's just looking for consensus on what option you all would like to be brought back in the final budget for consideration next Monday on the 18th. So I think any of us are happy to answer any questions, but hopefully those options make sense and hopefully they strike a pretty good balance, I think, of us trying to preserve necessary funding for some upcoming critical projects and at the same time bring back some, I know, really desired local street investment for this upcoming fiscal year.
Yeah, I think it sends a message to the community that we continue to improve the streets. So I agree with the mayor, I'd like to do that. I think option 2 is fine, taking it out of the major streets fund balance and not mess with the motor pool money.
Jason?
I agree. There's many reasons to continue to do these roads each year. You know, the longer we don't do them, the more expensive they become to maintain. You know, I'll have the same recommendation when we get to the next budget year, which currently doesn't have local streets either. And agree that I'd rather see the funding come from the major streets. You know, ultimately, I think the conversation around like the street sweeper is kind of different than using the motor pool funds for this. We think about how that's funded, you know, money's coming from DDA, money's coming from each and every department, to then take that to local roads is kind of almost need to undo all that to the departments and then fund the roads differently, in my opinion. But, so option 2.
Mike, thoughts?
Yeah, I'm fine with option 2. I think we need to continue to make investments. Property millage rate increased a couple of years back, and need to continue to show folks that the city's making progress on street improvements. So I think that's good.
That's great.
Good.
Thank you all. Appreciate the feedback. I am going to be asking council if they would consider going into closed session to receive an update on ongoing union contract negotiations with one of our bargaining units. But prior to that, I did just want to share that Cheney Huff, the new special events coordinator's first day was today. I am hoping that we didn't scare her away. We're very excited to have her joining the team. You know, she's got big shoes to fill, as well as, you know, a job that I think has very high expectations in terms of the community's expectations for the events we've hosted for many years. But I think she's really up to the challenge, and just excited to see, you know, what she's going to be able to do with our team. I am planning to invite her to the meeting next week on the 18th to introduce her to all of you. But I figured having her do that on her first day would maybe be a little more overwhelming than anyone needs on what is already a stressful first day of work. In addition to that, I wanted to just share with the city council, we are going to be conducting city clerk interviews tomorrow. Appreciate Councilman Steenstra is going to sit in on those with me and another one of our department heads tomorrow morning. So we are progressing with that process. And then the Human Resources Department and myself will be doing some screening interviews with the Assistant City Manager candidate pool. We'll be screening 5 candidates this week. We received a really strong pool of candidates for that position, and I just hope to share with you all that that's something you all should be proud of in terms of a lot of these positions, going back to hiring a fire chief last year and these other important leadership positions that, you know, I think Grandville is viewed as a destination for many people. I think our community has a good reputation, and I think that shows by the high quality candidates we have looking at these positions. So we are working hard through these difficult processes, but hopefully we'll have some more information to share in the upcoming weeks. That's all I have for this evening, Mr. Mayor, other than the request to go into closed session.
So, even after 28 years of being on the council, I've learned something new tonight, and that is going into the closed session normally takes 5 votes to do that, and since we have such a small group, we wouldn't be able to reach that, except there is an exception to that, and that is for the purpose of collective labor agreement. So we can do that. So anyway, let's open it up for council member comments. Mike, start with you tonight.
Nothing this evening, thank you.
Yeah.
Just say thanks to Jane for your work on the budget and for a great synopsis here tonight. Thank you much. And Mike, always appreciate your positive comments. Thanks for coming. And then I always appreciate charting new courses, but I think this was an expanded, we've never had 8 pages before, have we?
I don't know.
We have? Oh, maybe I haven't read all. But anyway, this is full of great information. So thank you to the staff that put that together.
Jason?
Nothing further for me?
Okay, so you showed the newsletter, and the article on the front is about the second graders who have been coming in. So I want to thank you, Tim, for hosting a couple of those groups of
Always fun.
signers. It
Always
is-
fun.
It is, so.
You know, I've done it a few times filling in for Steve, and I got the ultimate question this year. Little guy says, our sheet says City Hall with the mayor. Where's the mayor, and why are you here? So anyway, I explained that you're a very busy person, and I was just the fill-in.
I'm sure you would, and Griffin also filled in for one group.
I did, and
so-
I got very similar
Did
questions.
you?
I am very disappointed when they don't get to meet the mayor.
But I'll tell you, one of their favorite things is when I show them what this is, and I ask them what it is, and I get some different answers. Gavel, mallet, hammer, and I say something about Judge Judy, and oh yeah, they all know what that is. And I've said, how many times do you think I've had to bang this, and does your teacher have one of these in their classroom? No, they use different methods. They clap their hands or say class, class, or something like that. But it's always interesting. I'll say, how many times do you think I've had to use this? And sometimes somebody will say 1,000,000 times. And sometimes somebody will say never. And I've never had to use it, so.
No.
Anyway, but that's one of the things they like to talk about. So, anyway, a lot of fun. Anyway, there has been a request to go into closed session.
Mr. Mayor, if I
Yeah.
can interrupt you, we're gonna specifically recess into closed session.
Recess.
Because we'll ask council to consider the agreement.
And it will be for the purpose of labor, discussion of labor agreements. So, is there a motion to recess? into closed session?
So move.
Support?
And Jason. Marcy, would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Steenstra,
Yes.
Sullivan,
Yes.
Flanagan,
Yes.
and Mayor Mas.
Yes. All right, we'll take, say 5 minutes. So thank you, everybody, for joining us tonight.